So the other night we talked about praying without ceasing. And one of the main points around praying without ceasing is that we experience the presence of God all throughout our day because with every breath we take, we're reminded that we're breathing in God's breath, God's spirit that's already within us. We're breathing it back up to Him, right? And so I want to address something that I've been meaning to address for quite some time now in this series, but I haven't got around to it. Whenever we hear the word spiritual disciplines, I think what our mind immediately goes to is something like this old, starving monk out in the desert, worn to the bone, praying constantly 20 hours a day, right, reading scripture and praying. And, that might be cool for them, right? I mean, good for them, but what about us? We don't have the luxury of, doing nothing but living out in the desert and praying all day. We've got school to do. We've got jobs. We've got chores. I mean, we've got to eat and we've got to sleep, right? We just can't be as spiritual as those monks in the desert, right? Well, on the one hand, that is right. Those men and women who did that were very pious and righteous people, and really most of us can only dream of experiencing that kind of intimacy that they had with God. But on the other hand, it's actually not quite true, because the thing is, you don't need to live in a monastery in order to practice the presence of God. And notice that phrase, practicing the presence of God. Because spoiler alert, God is everywhere, even in our very lungs. And not just when we're doing the most spiritual activities, but whenever we're doing any activity, God's there. So whenever you're doing something mundane this week, I want us to try something. And by mundane, I mean kind of the run-of-the-mill, you just do this every day, right? So if you're washing the dishes, or you're doing your laundry and folding your laundry, or you're driving in your car somewhere, or walking the dog, or whatever it is, this week, while you're doing that, say some breath prayers. We talked about breath prayer on Wednesday, and just see what happens. Some of you might listen to music while you do your chores or while you're working or while you're driving, especially like listening to the radio. Turn that off and just say some breath prayers. Say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And just see what happens. Because if you do that enough, it's amazing how much time you'll actually spend in prayer, really without saying a whole lot. Because that adds up. It stacks. And that's how we can learn to pray well. That's how we can learn to experience the presence of God in prayer. And not just, when we're sitting down intentionally praying, or when we're at church, when we're doing something spiritual, but with or with anything that we do. That's how we experience God in our daily lives.